Making a good wine is not difficult nowadays. Making an authentic wine is more difficult. By Andrea, the owner of the top winery, Pieropan, from Soave Classico region in Italy. A few weeks ago, we visited Andrea in his winery, and that was such an educational yet yummy experience. Pieropan is a family-owned winery from 1880. The family has been making wine in the historical center of Soave City for more than a century. Until the late 2018, they moved everything to the new winery with a total sustainable design. They have simple-style Soave Classico with Garganega and Trebbiano di Soave grapes. They also have two CRU production, Cavallino and La Rocca, which are wine purely for meditation. In the middle to late autumn, all freshly hand-picked grapes will be crushed immediately in the winery. They use nitrogen-fueled crushing and pressing machines to eliminate the air contact.
The crushing protected from oxidizing. The juice that we obtain from the beginning to the end of the cycle of pressing will have the same characteristic.
That will actually help you to reduce or even totally not use
We don't use it at all. So in this way, we can work the grapes without the using of sulfur.
In their huge fermentation room, blocks of cement tanks line up. From the territories, each vineyard has its own fermentation tank.
In any case, treated separately and vinified each one separately.
Okay.
With two mainly grapes, Garganega and Trebbiano di Soave.
Pieropan believes in the authentic wine style from the grapes and the territories. Cement tanks won't give extra influence on the wine. Grape juice inside is fermented with ease. Slowly, it develops fresh and yummy flavors respecting to the most original characters of the fruit itself. Meanwhile, it is the best natural container to provide ideal temperature for the wine. In the first huge cellar, we find the tulip-shaped cement tanks. They are used for Pieropan's CRU, Cavallino. The fermented wine travels to these tanks with tubes and starts a quiet and aging process with another whole year before bottling. Pieropan has around 7 hectares in Cavallino CRU, the hillside of the heart of Soave Classico zone, with the volcano-style type.
Cavallino are 7 hectares of lands, but made of 13 different vineyards, because generically the size of the vineyard in the Soave Classico is pretty small. It's like the all viticulture area in the world, Borgonia, whatever, the size of the land is quite small. And in fact, in 7 hectares, we have 13 different pieces of land that made Cavallino. All of them are vinified separately, and all of them does all maturation alone, and just after 1 year, when we have to decide the blend, we will decide if all of them or a part of them will become Cavallino or not. So not necessarily everything that's born in the Cavallino area will be necessary Cavallino one.
We have tasted 4 vintages of Cavallino CRU. Even the youngest 2019 vintage has shown the potential complexity and tertiary aromas and flavors. Even the oldest vintage still shows a decent crispy and fresh white wine character. The second cellar is for the classics. Lines of French barriques fill up the big space, and there are 2 equally big chambers connecting each other. You can see the end from the beginning. Those barriques are for aging Pieropan's another CRU, La Rocca, which is located on the other side of the Soave Classico zone. Again, hillside, but with totally different soil with clay rocks. La Rocca is where Pieropan harvested the Garganega grapes, the last. Taking the advantage of the late harvest, the Garganega grapes are left on the vine until October. They are fully ripening over time. the grapes become transparently golden. That is the best moment of Garganega, with the concentrated aromas and flavors. La Rocca Cru, with 100% late harvested Garganega, shows the extreme complexity and potential to age.
Not like a young Soave Classico, we found subtle oak, rose petal, honey, almond, and many more in those bottles.
When all the beautiful winemaking process is done, the wine will be transformed into the still tanks without air contact. The still tanks we have passed from the beginning of our tour, there are just a few and simply for the purpose of calming down the wine before bottling, with again nitrogen gas for the maximum preservation of the freshness.
Part of them come from the 2018 when we moved. It's a machine that works with nitrogen. So
Okay.
that before close the wine, in both cases, cork or stew cup, we pumped in the nitrogen.
In the last few...
Yeah, exactly, in the space between the liquid and the top.
Coming to the tasting room, Andrea led us through the vertical tasting of Pieropan's 2 CRUs, 8 different vintages in total, from the youngest to the oldest. We were able to virtually travel through each year with its signature climates. Some are considered to be classical, while some others considered to be tough and hard for winery and winemakers. Meaningful thing is we can exchange the ideas with Andrea about what is important to make good wine.
The result of the quality of the wine is the consequence of 3 factors. Terroir, vitigno, grape, and warm, winemaker.
Yeah.
The percentage of them can change year per year depending on the vintage that you have. In a very good vintage, obviously the warm is less important because the vintage is so well that the grape is making a good job. Okay. In a difficult vintages, the terroir, so the vocation of the soil, is extremely important because can make the difference for the soil that is not so good as the good terroir. And the same thing, the winemaker. The good winemaker can follow better the difficult vintages. So the 3 factors are always them, but the percentage of the weight of them can change vintage per vintage.
I totally agree with him, and somehow when I was told there is a bad vintage, I tend to be more curious and expecting to know how the wine tastes. Of course, we're talking about wine made by a good winemaker, managed by a good winery from its place.